of your relationship is based on knowing each other and being friends, and part of it, I assume, is that you are both administrating online campus publications, and it gives you somebody else in the same situation to bounce ideas off of?
Definitely. We email each other so much, or we'll just call each other after an event and, texting each other little updates from meetings we go to. So it's definitely great to kind of have a shadow, or she's really an equivalent out there that can give me the news and give me updates. And obviously we're covering different realms because we have different interests. So we really keep each other up to date on what's going on.
Yeah, and it's just good to have someone to bounce ideas off of. I'm in charge my junior year, and I didn't plan on that, number one. So, if I get a story or a rumor that I'm like, is this worth pursuing? It's nice to have someone to bounce it off of and have a second opinion, I guess.
Yeah, we can ask each other if the other one has heard about it, and we can ask about other sources. So, again, just really making sure we have all our bases covered. We had a big story about the underwater hockey team that we really wanted to do, and we had a contact, but both of our publications are made up of freelancers. So when that story fell through for us, Emily was able to pick it up, and I was happy to see it in her publication. At least it was put out there somewhere. I don't really care if it's published in Spartan Edge or the Big Green, as long as it's informative and it's getting to the community in an effective way. So
yeah, and I think we overlap on a lot of feature kind of stuff, and maybe cover it in different ways. And there are some stories that you can't cover in enough ways. So if both of us do it, no skin off my nose.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is that's supposed to be that competitive spirit. You want the scoop. You want to ace the other guy out of the story. Is that's what seems to be part of the ethos in the journalism classes? That doesn't fit the model that you're using?
No. I guess competitive edge-wise, yeah, we both want more hits. We both want better viewers and more Twitter followers and everything else. But in terms of what's really going to benefit us, neither of us, I believe, has paid advertising. Do you pay advertising?
No.
Okay. No. So neither of us has paid advertising. So it's not like the number of hits directly affects our bottom line. And then I guess just as far as wanting to be the first or wanting to get the scoop, there are a lot of big stories that neither one of us have the capacity with our freelancers to delve into and to tackle. And I know there's always more stories that we want to tackle and don't have the time or resources or equipment to tackle. So to kind of double up on that is never harmful.
Yeah, and I think a big part of being collaborators comes from having freelancers and people that we can't pay. So they have to really be devoted to the craft, and we don't have any resources. We're both independently funded, we raise our own money, so when it comes down to it, if you can help each other out, we really understand the situation that the other one is in.
That's true. We also share an editor, for the record.
Yeah.
My sex and health editor is your
entertainment and events editor. So he's fantastic. He does it all.
We love him.
Yeah.
So he writes for both? Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
He edits for both of our publications.
Yep.
Are there other campus publications that you talk with on a fairly regular basis?
Yeah. We just kind of started and had our first meeting of MAMA, I guess we kind of reinstated, but it's the MSU Alternative Media Association, and we contacted every publication we could think of, including some that didn't exist anymore by accident. And so from that we kind of, it just so happened that actually also in your blogging class, we met Dustin McNeese, who I, have done some lunches with and stuff, and he's a cool guy, and he's the editor of the Red Cedar Log now. And then Alicia knew Rebecca, right?
With Ing Magazine.
Yeah, with
right?
Ing Magazine. And then I wrote for Spartan Weekly for a semester, and I happened to know the girl that became editor over there. So, between the two of us, we have connections with every publication on campus.
Because you're not part of a for-profit click model with advertising, does it matter as much to you then if the conversation about your stories occurs on Facebook or if it occurs on your pages? Because sometimes what'll happen is when you post about a new story, the conversation takes place over on Facebook as opposed in the comment section of your publications. Where do you want those comments to fall, ideally?
Anywhere, as long as they're there, is the way I feel about it. As long as there's a conversation being spurred by what we're doing, I think that's what's most important. As journalists, we're really committed to getting the stories out that matter, and we want to provide all the different views. So I mean, I know a lot of times I'll post a link to a story on Spartan Edge that I really like, and people, all my friends will have a conversation about it, and my high school teachers will be commenting on it, and I'm, like, okay, we'll go over to the website. But yeah, I mean, as long as they're talking about it, again, that's what's really important.
I'd say the only advantage to having it on the website is that it's a more public forum. I know, like, maybe an alum reading The Big Green that was like, I wrote for their ones, would want to see comments on that webpage as opposed to, like, not knowing to go to my Facebook wall.
Yeah.
Now, do you cross-link to each other's stories, and what kinds of assets do you share?
Yeah, well, I wrote it's actually creative nonfiction about a ghost in my house, which is a totally different story. But I linked to a multimedia piece that Spartan Edge had done because the paranormal investigator that Spartan Edge had talked to or whatever, I actually contacted. So, yeah, I think that was a good way to get some multimedia in my story without having to produce multimedia. So I was like, Spartan Edge did a good job covering that. And I guess just kind of like things like that.
What other books have you borrowed or linked to?
Well, we've linked to some of the longer feature stories that relate to the same sort of topics we're covering, again with multimedia, and as far as editorials, we're definitely working on that with some of the other publications that we mentioned earlier, so delving into more opinionated issues where we really have the same viewpoints. So.
And I think too with the longer pieces linking to shorter pieces, I mean, when you read an article, there's always more you want to know, or if you're really interested in the subject, you want another venue to go to. And sometimes some websites have those things that popped up that are like possibly related. Yeah. And I mean, I wish that every Big Green story did that with every other story out there on the subject. So like when my underwater hockey story picked up, like if someone was more interested, they could go to Spartan Edge's underwater hockey story. So.
One of the things that I think is a big distinction between traditional old-style media and the online new-style online media, for example, when the state news covers something, it's as if they don't acknowledge that anybody else has covered it, even if they've covered it before. Whereas I think the whole idea of the web is to link to other stories. What is your philosophy, and what do you tell your writers about acknowledging other places they've got material?
I actually demand it, to be point blank. If people have seen information in a state news story, I tell them to link to it. I've done it myself with a town hall protest and another budget story. So I think it's really important for people to know that there's a different version of the story out there, or even just a story that has more information from kind of a different angle. I don't want to say like we're taking totally different sides on things, but.
Yeah, and like I say, like anything related, if a reader wants it, they should be able to access it from your story.
Yeah.
So
it's really important. I mean, hopefully other publications will pick up on that. There's definitely a value in linking to each other.
I mean, if someone's interested, they're going to run a Google search anyway. If you're trying to hide something, they're going to find it.
Yeah. There's nothing to hide on the web, so we don't try to.
My assumption is it has to do with advertising clicks. They simply don't want to lose people from their website. There was always a bias that you didn't link to anybody outside your website.
Right.
But it seems to me in the new click environment that that's becoming less and less relevant as you're using other social media to both drive traffic to and also discuss the story elsewhere. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me to be link exclusive only in your own publications.
Right, definitely. And I mean, with the scope of what we cover and what we can cover with the writers we have, I just really, it's not all inclusive to link all within my site, at least.
And sometimes linking to other publications and other stories has spurred conversations that have been a little heated, if not at the very least interesting. So I think it's good. People need to debate the way stories are being covered.
Do you see a difference in the audiences that comment on the different publications?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you characterize the differences? Who comes and comments on Spartan Edge, who comments on Big Green, and who comments on the other campus media?
Okay, well, you go.
All right. Spartan Edge just recently switched over to a WordPress format, so we do have information about the email address and other things that people are willing to provide when they post a comment, which is great. It kind of helps us track our demographics. So I've really noticed that we have people commenting on stories they seem to really care about. If they're connected to a story or an organization that's covered in a story in a certain way, then they're really likely to comment. If they feel the story wasn't covered very well in other campus publications, then they're likely to point that out and really congratulate us on it. And we have some people who are obviously loyal to more mainstream publications that kind of share their criticism willingly, openly, readily, without
Nice
being
of
without
them.
being constructive. So it's interesting. I mean, we run the full spectrum.
Yeah, I would say the bulk of the comments that we get is people who were sourced in the story or who were interviewed that kind of still have more to say, or like not everything that they said got in there, and so they're usually pretty informative. And really, the only we published a conservative blogger at one point, and we got some really weird comments on his articles that were just crazy. Other than that, like, I feel like all of our comments are either helpful or I enjoyed this, thanks. So, I mean, that's helpful. And as far as like other publications, I know Spartan Edge gets heated debates, but State News just strikes me as like everyone who has something to say, even if their opinion isn't very good or like merited. And I've seen articles where a girl will write a column and they'll be like, "Great column, too bad you're ugly." Like,
Yeah,
that's not constructive.
Like, I think one of the hardships of being the State News, which is so mainstream and obviously available to everyone on campus, is
Right.
that everyone feels they have the right to comment, no matter what they're saying. I mean, it can be
You do.
totally obsolete. It can be totally obsolete, and it's on there. So I can't imagine sorting through that number of comments on every story. I think it's really nice to kind of have a more focused comment group for Spartan Edge that we can really sort through.
Definitely. And most of our readers are readers. So I guess they're not people that just have an opinion or just are browsing through and
Just wanna make
decide
nasty comments.
right,
Yeah.
right. I think most of our readers are invested in our publication and what we do. So.